The musty air of the Boston University archives hung heavy with the scent of old paper and forgotten secrets. Historical journalist Elias Thorne carefully lifted another box from the estate collection, his practiced hands gentle with the aged materials. The Pennington family collection had arrived just weeks ago, donated after the death of Clara Pennington, a reclusive Boston socialite who had lived to the remarkable age of 101. Most of the contents were predictable. Society photographs from elaborate dinner parties, charitable event programs printed on expensive paper, correspondence with other prominent families discussing the weather and social obligations. But then Elias found something different. At the bottom of the third box lay an oversized photograph, professionally mounted and remarkably well preserved despite its obvious age. The image showed an elaborate dollhouse, clearly expensive and meticulously crafted, Victorian in style, with multiple rooms visible through the open front facade, each furnished with tiny chairs, tables, and decorative elements. What caught his attention wasn't just the photograph itself, but what accompanied it. A small yellowed envelope was sealed to the back with dark red wax that had somehow remained intact for decades. Written in careful script across the front were the words, "This is not a dollhouse. It is a record. Do not open." Elias turned the photograph over in his hands, feeling the weight of genuine photographic paper from the early 1900s. A date was stamped in fading ink. October 15th, 1902. Below that, in the same careful handwriting as the envelope, someone had written, "Father's work must never be forgotten, but it must never be repeated." The contradiction was immediate and compelling. The photograph clearly showed a dollhouse, an elaborate one, certainly, but unmistakably a child's plaything, scaled to miniature size. Yet Clara Pennington's note insisted otherwise. What kind of record could a dollhouse possibly be? What secret could be hidden in something so innocent? Despite the clear instruction not to open the envelope, Elias found himself carefully peeling away the century-old wax. His curiosity, honed by decades of historical research, would not be contained. Inside, a single sheet of paper contained a brief message written in the same elegant script. "If you have opened this, then you understand curiosity cannot be contained. Look closely at the figures inside. They were once my father's guess." Elias examined the photograph again, this time with a magnifying glass from his research kit. The dollhouse contained tiny figures positioned throughout the different rooms. In the parlor, 2 figures sat at a miniature tea table, frozen in what appeared to be polite conversation. In the bedroom, a single figure lay on the bed in an unusual position. In what appeared to be a study lined with tiny books, another figure stood by a bookshelf, one arm raised as if reaching for something. They were remarkably detailed for dolls, but the photograph's resolution made it difficult to see much beyond basic positioning and posture. On the next morning, Elias contacted Dr. Genevieve Moreau, a specialist in historical artifact analysis at Harvard University. Her reputation for solving mysteries hidden in old documents and photographs was legendary among academic circles. If anyone could help him understand what he was looking at, it would be her. "Bring it over immediately," she said over the phone after he described his discovery. "We have equipment that can digitize and enlarge historical photographs, far beyond what was possible even 10 years ago. If there are details hidden in that image, we'll find them." Dr. Moreau's laboratory occupied the basement of Harvard's Peabody Museum, a maze of corridors lined with artifacts from around the world. Banks of computers hummed alongside specialized cameras and lighting equipment worth more than most people's houses. She positioned the photograph under a high-resolution scanner, adjusting settings with practiced precision while explaining each step of the process. "This is remarkable preservation for something from 1902, she noted, as the image began to appear on her monitor in stunning detail. The photographer clearly used expensive materials and knew his craft. The detail is extraordinary. As the digital image loaded pixel by pixel, both researchers leaned closer to the screen. What they saw made them step back in shock, their faces pale with disbelief. The figures inside the dollhouse were not dolls at all. Each tiny form showed anatomical detail impossible to achieve in porcelain or wood. Under magnification, the figure in the parlor revealed exposed musculature along one arm, as if skin had been carefully peeled back to display the layers beneath. The figure on the bed displayed an opened chest cavity, organs visible in miniature perfection with surgical precision. Most disturbing of all, the faces bore expressions of unmistakable terror and pain, their eyes wide with fear that seemed to transcend death itself. "This has to be some kind of trick photography. Doctor," Moreau whispered, but her voice lacked conviction. She had spent 30 years analyzing historical artifacts and had never seen anything like this. Elias was already reaching for his phone, calling the university's research librarian with urgent requests. "I need everything you can find on the Pennington family, particularly anyone involved in medicine or anatomy around 1900. Check medical journals, university records, hospital affiliations, everything." The answer came within hours, delivered by a graduate student who had spent the afternoon buried in archives. Dr. Alastair Pennington, Clara's father, had been a prominent anatomist and physician in Boston's medical community during the late 1800s and early 1900s. He had maintained a successful private practice while also conducting research into human anatomy and preservation techniques that pushed the boundaries of accepted medical practice. Most of his work had supposedly been destroyed in a mysterious house fire in 1910, just 5 years after his death. But court records told a different story entirely. In 1905, a local engraver and photographer named Arthur Finch had sued Dr. Pennington for unpaid work totaling nearly $300, a substantial sum at the time. The case documents mentioned a series of life-sized anatomical studies that Finch had been commissioned to document photographically over the course of several months. The case had been settled out of court rather quickly, with all materials and evidence ordered sealed by judicial decree. Elias spent the next day tracking down Arthur Finch's personal papers, eventually locating them in the Massachusetts Historical Society's extensive collection of local historical documents. Finch's journal entries from 1904 and 1905 made for increasingly disturbing reading as the months progressed. Dr. Pennington's collection grows more remarkable by the week. Finch had written in March 1904, his handwriting neat and enthusiastic. The detail in these anatomical models surpasses anything I have seen in medical textbooks or universities. Each specimen appears to have been preserved at the moment of perfect anatomical display, showing structures that wouldn't normally be hidden from view. But by summer, Finch's tone had changed dramatically, his writing becoming more erratic and concerned. There is something unnatural about the doctor's work that troubles me deeply. I swear the models have changed position between my visits to his laboratory. Yesterday, the female specimen in the bedroom display had her arm at her side in a peaceful pose. Today, it reaches toward the door as if pleading for escape. The doctor insists I am imagining things, attributing it to the lighting or my own fatigue. But I know what I have seen with my own eyes. The final entry, dated September 1905, was barely legible, written in a shaking hand that betrayed the writer's fear. They watch me work. I can feel their eyes following my movements around the room. This is not anatomy. This is something else entirely, something that defies explanation. I will complete my contract and never return to that house of horrors. Elias cross-referenced the dates in Finch's journal with newspaper archives from the same period, searching through dozens of local publications. What he found sent chills down his spine and confirmed his growing suspicions. 3 people had disappeared from Boston between March and September 1905, each case reported in the newspapers, but never solved. Samuel Davies, a local artist who had publicly criticized Dr. Pennington's methods as inhumane and unethical in a letter to the Boston Herald. Eleanor Vance, a young laundress who had worked for the Pennington household until she abruptly stopped appearing for work without explanation. Patrick O'Connell, a popular street musician who had performed outside Dr. Pennington's practice until residents complained, he had simply vanished one day, leaving behind his violin. Back in Dr. Moreau's laboratory, advanced imaging revealed another impossibility that challenged everything they thought they knew about 19th century photography. The figures in the Dollhouse photograph emitted a faint luminescence, visible only under specific wavelengths of light that required specialized equipment to detect. This biological phenomenon, known as bioluminescence, occurs only in living tissue under very specific conditions involving chemical reactions. This should be absolutely impossible, Doctor, Moreau said, studying the wavelength analysis results with growing amazement. Photographic plates in 1902 couldn't capture bioluminescence. The technology simply didn't exist, yet here it is, clear as day under spectral analysis. The implications were staggering and seemed to defy rational explanation. Either they were looking at the most sophisticated photographic hoax in history, created with techniques that wouldn't be invented for decades, or they were witnessing evidence of something that challenged the very foundations of medical science. A letter found deep in Clara Pennington's personal correspondence provided the final piece of the puzzle. Written to her closest friend Margaret Whitmore in 1911, 1 year after the fire that supposedly destroyed her father's work, Clara had written, "I have done what needed to be done. Father's house of horrors has been put to rest, and with it his poor captives have finally found peace. I kept only a single record of what he accomplished, not out of pride, but as a warning. Some knowledge should die with those who possess it." The fire, it seemed, had not been accidental at all. Elias and Dr. Moreau spent weeks trying to find a rational explanation for what they had discovered. They consulted experts in photography, anatomy, and historical fraud from universities across the country. Every analysis pointed to the same impossible conclusion. The photograph was authentic. The figures were once human, and somehow Doctor. Pennington had found a way to preserve living people in a miniaturized state while maintaining biological functions. The method remained completely unexplainable by medical science. Knowledge in 1902 included no technique for human miniaturization or the kind of preservation that would maintain biological luminescence for decades. Yet the evidence was undeniable and growing stronger with each test. Samuel Davies, Eleanor Vance, and Patrick O'Connell had indeed disappeared in 1905. Their faces, when compared to available photographs from family members and newspaper articles, matched the figures in the dollhouse with terrifying accuracy. Davies occupied the parlor, his artist's hands frozen in what appeared to be a gesture of creative despair. Eleanor was positioned in the bedroom, her laundress's apron still visible despite her reduced size. Patrick stood in the study, his musician's fingers pressed against the miniature window, as if trying to escape his prison. Dr. Pennington's motivation remained partially hidden, but evidence suggested a combination of scientific obsession and personal vendetta. Davies had publicly criticized his methods in the newspaper. Eleanor had likely witnessed something in the household that made her a liability to his secret work. Patrick may have simply been in the wrong place at the wrong time, a victim of opportunity rather than design. Clara Pennington had lived with the knowledge of her father's crimes for over a century, carrying the weight of his terrible secrets until her death at 101. The dollhouse photograph was simultaneously her confession and her warning. By preserving this single record while destroying everything else in the fire, she had created a puzzle that would eventually reveal the truth, while ensuring her father's methods died with him. The case files have now been sealed by mutual agreement between Boston University and Harvard. The photograph itself has been placed in a restricted collection, accessible only to researchers with special clearance and compelling academic reasons. Dr. Moreau's spectral analysis data has been classified, and Elias's research notes are stored in a secured archive. But troubling questions remain unanswered. How did Dr. Pennington achieve what should have been impossible? What other victims might there have been before Davies, Vance, and O'Connell? And perhaps most disturbing of all, did Clara Pennington truly destroy all of her father's work, or might other records exist, hidden away and waiting to be discovered? The Dollhouse photograph stands as a testament to a dark chapter in Boston's history, a reminder that some secrets are buried not because they are untrue, but because they are too terrible to accept. In preserving this single image, Clara Pennington ensured that her father's victims would not be forgotten, even as she worked to ensure his methods would never be repeated. History, as Elias now understood, is not just about what is recorded and remembered. Sometimes it is about what is intentionally forgotten, and the terrible knowledge that some people carry to their graves. The dollhouse and its miniaturized residents serve as a chilling reminder that the past holds secrets far darker than most of us could ever imagine.